What's the right way to practice chair pose or Utkatasana? Well, there's a lot going on in chair pose. It's really a whole body pose, but for today, we're going to be taking a look at the lower body in chair pose. So if you take a look at Utkatasana from the side, you can see that there are three major areas in the lower body where movement is taking place: the hip, the knee, and the ankle. And those 3 points can really be arranged in a variety of ways relative to one another, and it can all still be chair pose. So I'm just gonna go ahead and say that there isn't one right universal objective way to practice chair pose, but the question that's a little better to be asking is, what's the right version of chair pose for my body and for my goals today? So let's take a look at two ends of the spectrum for lower body positioning. On the one end, we have a chair pose where we let the primary movement be knees tracking forward, and then our torso is a little more upright, and we take our arms up here. And this, of course, is like one end of the spectrum, so I'm kind of exaggerating it, but here's a knees forward Utkatasana. Now in that variation, when the knees track forward, we're loading our quadriceps, the muscles that run along the front of our thigh, more. They're working more when the knees track forward. And on the other hand, at the other end of the spectrum, we can practice chair pose by reaching our hips back instead of knees forward. So when the hips go back, but the knees stay pretty parked in place, this pose now becomes more about loading the muscles across the back of our hips, so more like our hamstrings and our glutes. And you can see that my torso necessarily will angle forward a little more here. So on that end of the spectrum, we're loading posterior, and on the other end of the spectrum, we're loading more anterior. So it can really come down to what you're interested in doing as far as your lower body loading in the moment. Are you interested in more quad work happening, or are you interested in more backside work happening? And then you can choose which variation to take based on that. Additionally, there's some flexibility, mobility goals that someone may have for their body. And in that case, if we take a look here at the knees reaching forward variation, do you see how my ankle joints move more when I'm in this knee forward variation versus the hips back variation? My ankles didn't really move very much, but here we come into more range of motion in dorsiflexion. So if ankle mobility happens to be one of my goals, and if I want to work on that in chair pose, then I might choose that end of the spectrum to practice so that I can get some good active movement happening in my ankles that way. But on the other hand, if hip mobility might be a goal of mine, then I might choose the hips back variation because I'm getting a lot more range of motion in hip flexion here, and it's active range of motion because everything is working to support it. So this is a great way to practice Utkatasana for improved hip mobility, and if that's our goal, then we might choose that variation. A third consideration is someone who may experience sensitivity or pain in their knees. Now, if that's the case, that person may be interested in temporarily backing off, loading their knees until the pain dies down. And so in that case, that person may choose to practice Utkatasana with the hips back because this loads the hips more and the knees less. And it may be a nice temporary strategy until the sensitivity in their knees dies down. Lastly, you may have no specific goals like any of those at all, but maybe you just want to practice chair pose and let it be just a general low body loading shape. And if that's you, then instead of thinking too much about the extremes, like all the way forward or all the way back, can you think of just finding a pose that's more just straight down the middle and gets all the joints moving and loaded a little more evenly in an evenly distributed, well-rounded way. So this could be a perfect Utkatasana if you just want general low body work to be happening. If you appreciated this content, subscribe to my channel so that you can stay up to date on all of the tips that I share.